Hey, Coach, so happy you found us on YouTube. We're very excited. I'm in my happy place in an empty gym, but I'm in my happy place. Let me know. First of all, subscribe and like. So hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell up above, and you'll get notifications. We put a new video up every day to help you become a better basketball coach. And if you're looking to take your coaching to the next level, come over and join us. Let me help you put a couple pictures on your wall at teachhoops.com. Come over and join us there, and let's head back to the video.
Record again, make sure it's going. All right. So let's anything else on recruiting?
No, I think that, like you said, I do miss the human interaction side of things, and I think that part is probably what is will be more exciting moving forward once we're able to get back to whatever the new normal is. But we're doing as much interacting as we can to make up for this time, and I'm just looking forward to whatever we're able to.
Do you think it's going to affect? Like, I don't think I think the next year is going to be different. Have you started mapping? I mean, I'm not sure they're going to be playing high school basketball in New York next winter.
I don't, I've heard a lot of things from a lot of people, and I'm definitely not the one to, shout out information when I don't know if it's a fact, but I've been told and been instructed to prepare like I prepare every year. So for me, I'm just mapping out where I need to be, what I need to do, and who I need to see. But I've been doing this long enough where this class, it's not this, if they don't play or God forbid something like that happens, this won't be the last time I saw them. I've been watching them for years.
So explain the teams you play. This intrigues me. Like, how far do you have to go to play teams during the regular season?
So junior college is unique because it's dependent upon region and conference, etc. So we're in Region 15, Division 3. And Region 15, Division 3 has, on the Division 3 side, has Dutchess Community College, Bronx, Hostos, which is also in the Bronx, Suffolk in Long Island, Nassau in Long Island. Trying to think of the other.
But you don't have to leave New York City.
Well, for our region play, no, because they're all in the city. So those are those 8 schools. Well, Dutchess is right outside New York City. It's about an hour.
Okay.
And Long Island, obviously, the two teams in Long Island. But in our region alone, the number 1 team in the country is in our region, and we got to play them twice. And the number 3 team in the country is in our region. We got to play them twice. So that's on your schedule off the bat. And then you put those 8 teams that you got to play twice. So that's 16 games. You have another 14 games that you have to fill that are out of region. And what's interesting about Monroe is that we are a private institution. So we are not in the CUNY Athletic Conference that a lot of the teams in our region are in.
Right.
So I can schedule whoever. And at JUCO, you can schedule Division 1, Division 2. It doesn't matter what division of the team playing is. So, my goal has always been the same. Get these kids to compete at the highest level possible, teach them what it's like to compete with the best, but also find competitive environments where they can be successful.
Right.
We go out and we play a balanced schedule, but a lot of tough teams. So we'll play our Division 1 counterpart twice because, in the past that's drawn a big crowd and it's a competitive game. And then we also will go out to Maryland. They've got great JUCOs down in Maryland. It's a couple hours, stay over down there, play a couple games, maybe a couple times a year. We do a couple trips up to Boston and play some of the better teams up there. Their region is not as balanced, so we usually go out and play the top teams in their region. And then, New Jersey is great because it's right over the bridge for us, and there's another.
And the ones that are close to you, how do you get to the games?
So it depends. I mean, our school is great about how they treat the athletes and what we do. So it really depends on how far we're going. It could be vans, but that's nothing new to me. I've been driving vans since I started out at.
So it's not. So you don't jump on the subway to go to a game.
No,
I was talking to some high school coaches in New York, and they literally jump on the subway to go to a game.
Yeah, and their kids meet up at the game and then they go home, and that's the environment down here. But no, we travel either by coach bus or by van or however.
Okay.
We're going to get there because we're departing in the middle of the day, and we got to make sure that we're there for pregame and walk through and everything like that.
Okay. Okay. No, yeah, that's why I asked, because when that coach told me, I go, oh my God, I can't imagine trying to corral my guys onto a subway. And the thing is, that's not my world. He's like,
Right.
that's not a problem. They do this I mean, that's like riding a bike for them. It's not an issue for them, you know?
Oh, it's very true. The kids
Yeah.
here in the city are very, they can function very much on their own. And for them to hop on a subway to get to a game in high school, that's something that they get used to very quickly. So,
Right. Oh, I would lose half my team. Literally, I would lose. It'd be like, oh shit, where the hell are they? All right, let's do some of the stuff we had talked about with sharing and stuff. So you want to grab? I think the screen should still be. You should still.
yeah, I mean, I know that, we talked a little bit about building a program, so
Yeah,
I
let's
can
do
kind of
that.
share with you,
Let's do that
kind of go
first.
from there as a starting point and then show you what we do off the court and then on the court.
Okay.
So just to give you a little background before I kind of show you everything is when I took over at Monroe, there was only one returner. Um, when it got to May. So I had one player on the roster who's a volleyball player. So I technically had 0 players on the roster. So I brought in a whole team last year of all freshmen. So when you talk about building a program, this was, start literally building it from scratch. So it was a great opportunity to instill the culture and the process.
But and you have them as a JUCO. You have them shorter then, though. You're not like the D3 coach that gets them for 4 years.
Right. And I think that's why a lot of the stuff that we do, we simplify. Like the culture is a little more simple. It's not,
Yeah.
it's a big deal, but it's not, this big overarching thing that, because I wish we could, but I don't have that much time. So
Right.
maturing and being mature, growth, as an adult and as a young student athlete, those are really important. So we have to focus, and especially because we're preparing them for a 4-year, we need to prepare them to be able to get through the obstacles that, lie ahead of them. So,
Right.
We simplify things to, fit the team that we have and make it work for them. So to give you an idea, I'll just share my screen right here with our value system, because I think that's the best place to start. So we're pretty simple. And
I love that. First of all, I love simple, and people call these all sorts of things. You call it value systems. Some people call them pillars. Some people call them. They're all important, especially for the young coaches listening. They're all important to come up with. We all have them. My parents taught them to me, so I think they're important for any sort of system. And I love that you've tried to simplify it. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt, Coach. Go ahead.
No, not at all. So I'll show you how we got to the hashtags at the top are very important, and I'll show you how we got to them, because it's a very interesting process. But so our 2 hashtags of the year that we stick with are start unknown, finish unforgettable, and win the day. And they both have much deeper meaning than just win on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays. But
Right.
I'll go back to that. So our value system at Monroe, I've tried to simplify everything that I've learned from some of the great coaches like Coach Gately and Coach Charlie Turner and Arizona State. And, they've developed some of the best cultures in the country. And I've had the opportunity to talk to them about it. But, I've taken the parts that I think I can apply to our program. And, our biggest things are, effort and attitude equals opportunity. So when I talk about effort, I talk about effort in the classroom and on the court. Like I'm not going to let you practice if you haven't gone to school in 3 days.
Right.
It's just, it doesn't help me and it doesn't help you. And also, one of the things that I learned from Coach Gately at Fordham was she always taught me you have to teach your kids how not to want to lose before you can teach them how to want to win. And that's what I talk about when I talk about effort.
Say that again, Coach. Say that again.
So she told me that instead of teaching your kids how to win, you got to teach them to hate to lose, pretty much. And once they hate to lose, then they'll really have that, that fire. So when I talk about effort, I talk about the fire in practice to not want to lose a drill. Like I want my kids to be going so hard. We keep track of points and everything we do and charted. And, I want everything down to, free throws at the end of practice to be as competitive as they possibly can. And I think there's a great balance in competition where, they're supportive of one another, but they also understand that they're here to, improve. And I think that kind of is a driving force. The attitude piece for me is it's all about how you carry yourself, your character, what are you able to do, on and off the court? How do you respond to scenarios? As they say, every action has a reaction.
Right.
So how do you control your responses, your emotions? And listen, I don't expect any player to come in on any day and every single day and be like, hey, coach, I'm in the best mood ever. School's great. I love everything. Like, I don't expect that. But what I do expect is that you come in understanding what your goals are, why you're here, and the ability to put things aside or work through things with the staff and your teammates to kind of stick together and also allow us to continue to get better every day and not be a roadblock.
Right.
And that kind of leads me into something actually that we were talking about last night, which is really important to me in my program, which I was having a conversation last night with the coach, Chad Forcier over at Milwaukee Bucks, and he said, we were talking about playing your roles in basketball. And he said to me, we always preach to our players, you don't have to be a superstar, but you have to be a star in your role. And I have used that with my team a ton of times. It is so important that everybody has the right attitude about their roles. It's not just about how many points or rebounds or.
I think that's a hidden gem there. You have to be. I mean, so I coach Wesley Matthews, who's at the Bucks right now, is one of my guys, and I coach Wesley, and he was undrafted out of Marquette and has had a 13-year, 14, I don't even know, a long career in the NBA at this point, playing with the Bucks. But the reason he has a career and still has an NBA career is because he became a star of his role. He figured out I was going to be a defender. I could guard LeBron. I could guard. I could figure out how I could. That's the perfect. I think that's really hard. It's even harder for high school kids, I think, than maybe even the older kids to do that.
Yeah, I think that, especially even at the low level, you want to shine, you want to be seen at the next level, you want that opportunity. But I have listen, if you come in and you're an excellent defensive player, I'm going to work on expanding your game on the offensive side. Sure, I'm going to try and expand it. But as you're learning, as you're in the process of learning different things, it's also extremely important.
So start that over again after I talked about Wesley. I didn't hear anything that you said after that, and I'll just edit that out in the post that.
So I think at the JUCO level, you'll find that, players still want to shine. And I don't necessarily, like, if I bring in a great defender and I'm not just going to ask them to be a defender their whole career. I'm going to work on their other skills so they can get to the next level. But it's so important for the team to be successful, and part of getting seen is being on a good team. They're not, you may be a great player, but if we can't win, you're going to get less opportunity to be seen.
Right.
So that's where starring in your role really comes in. And then, the opportunity part is the reward part, is that if you put those first two things together, us as a coaching staff and also as an athletic department and even further as an institution are going to provide opportunity, whether, the school obviously and myself, we worked very hard together on career services and stuff like that. But when I talk opportunity, I talk about, exposing my players to some of the things in the basketball world that maybe I had the chance to see, or people I got to know that maybe they wouldn't have had the chance to, growing up in the city and not being able to get out and see some of these things. And so we do a ton of things as a team, whether it's NBA games, WNBA games, different speakers, motivational speakers in women's basketball and in women's sports and, just in general. And, I have plenty of great stories. Perfect one is one of my better players this past year wanted to be a referee. And a friend of mine happens to be one of the evaluators for the NBA. And so she is looking for more female officials. So she came down to one of our games when she was in New York to introduce herself after the game and talk hoops with my player and talk about being a referee. So that is the type of opportunity we try to create if you're able to put the effort and attitude parts together.
Right. I think that's it's that building relationships outside of, and is there anything you're thinking uniquely that you're going to do maybe right now that you're not seeing them in the summer, or you're not maybe seeing them in the fall? Are you thinking anything outside the?
I think that, we've done the general team Zoom calls and they've got their workouts that they've got to do at home. But I think that, as we get more instruction on what we are allowed to do and what we aren't allowed to do, I've had a lot of time to I've gone through this quarantine. I take notes at work, but I've gone through 4 or 5 binders during this quarantine of notes on different calls and different things with other coaches. So I've been trying to put together, contingency plans on what we're going to do and, how we're going to do things, as the situation here, especially in New York, unfolds. So.
Right. I think that's a great idea. And I love how simple that is. I mean, it's true. This is a life lesson. Value, effort plus attitude equals opportunity. Think about your coaching career that we just talked about. I mean, that's it right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just to kind of go back to, I talked to you about the hashtags a little bit. So, I think when you're building a program, and I'll come back to this in a second, I think when you're building a program, it's extremely important to have your kids, your players, have some ownership for the culture and have a say in what you do. And I was lucky enough I know I had mentioned Coach Gately, Coach Jessica Minetti at Sacred Heart. I was lucky enough to learn and see them build their programs, over periods of time. And the ownership part is important. So just before I hop back to what our hashtag means as a program, I'm just going to show you this document. Let me see if I can bring it up. Hold on 1 second, if you don't mind.
No worries. You're much better than me. As coaches doing this, I'm gonna confess that I have a tab issue on most browsers. So Coach only has 2 tabs open on the top. I have usually like 50. So because usually I'm doing 18 different things at one time. That's what coaches do. But
I know on these Zoom calls, I'm trying to be able to keep up with the amount of things that people want to share and what we've got to do. But I do have it here.
Do you have a favorite restaurant in the Bronx as we're doing this? So when I come visit?
Oh, wow. Dominic's is Dominic's in like the Little Italy, that kind of area. That's one of my favorites.
Usually when I go to Boston, I had a friend tell me this. When I go to Boston, I always ask the beat cops where they eat. And it's like I always ask them, and they've always sent me good spots. Like, where would you guys go? Like, because usually people don't go up and talk to them, and it's like I just tell them, hey, I'm a tourist. Where would you eat? And they go, well, go down here, make a left, and go down to that there's only 4 seats in the whole Italian restaurant. This was in Little Italy in Boston. It was like go down this, and it's like it was the best. Oh my god, it was so good. But you got to ask. The cops will at least be relatively nice.
Yeah, I mean the spots that we have some Spanish spots and different little spots that we like to go to as a team where they know us, they prepare for us. We call them ahead, let them know we're on our way over after a game. But
right,
we're right in the middle of the Bronx, so we'll just if we have a coaches meeting, we'll just hop over to one of the local spots.
Yeah.
But here, so let me share this with you. So going back to what I was talking about, so I like to have them take ownership of stuff, and this is something I learned. I think I pretty much stole this from Coach Gately, but it's a great idea. But make sure that she gets the credit, obviously. So this is what we call DNA of the Express, which is who are we and what do we do. And it's an NCAA bracket that's completely blank. And what we'll do is we will take that bracket and we will use all these words here that you see and put them in all the different positions in the bracket. So there's things like get better every day, mental toughness, sense of urgency, the little things.
So let me ask a question. So it's a bracket of 64 for the people that are listening, and he has a big long list on a piece of paper. Where did you come up with this list? Did the players come up with this list? How did this list, like energy and vocal and discipline and yada, 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 come up?
So this list has been passed down. I've gotten it from other coaches who started it, and then I've taken off a bunch of it and added some slogans and different things that I thought were interesting. So basically, what you do is you put the 64 words into an NCAA bracket, and you allow your team to vote each word against each other until you get to the Final Four and then the championship.
Love that.
And then we take the champion and the runner-up and determine which our slogan is that's going to go on our jersey and what's our, in-house slogan. So basically what it brings you back to is here where we started, which is our champion and our slogan is start unknown, finish unforgettable. And the girls decided on that because they believe that maybe they were overlooked in high school. Maybe they, wanted to create something together, a bunch of kids that don't know each other except from having played against each other. And so that was really the first half of the season was all about being unknown. And then the second half of the season when we were we going into break, we had won 8 in a row going into the second half of the year with a tough schedule. We used to preach finishing unforgettable. This is now you've accomplished part one, and now you got to accomplish part two. And then the other thing is win the day, which I'm sure so many people use, and I'm not unique to that, but the meaning for win the day for our program is a lot different. And we track wins, and I don't mean just on our schedule. We were 19 wins this year. That's 19 wins, but we track the wins throughout the day on a chart. If a kid gets an A, that's a win for them. If a kid, maybe who struggles to be on time for class is able to be in class 2-3 days in a row on time or early, that's a win. If someone who struggles with a drill does it perfectly, that's a win. If someone can, catches a bad attitude but can correct themselves without needing to be corrected, that's a win. So we keep track of the wins that we get, the little ones. And then you look at it and, for us overall, did we have more wins or more losses on that day? And that really determines whether we won the day or not. And our goal is to find a way, no matter how hard we have to grind, to win enough times during the day that overall it's a big victory.
So go back to the bracket. How do you do do you do it in a team meeting and sit and do the whole bracket in one sitting?
Yeah, so usually we have a team meeting in the preseason where we'll kind of talk it through. Some of the times, depending on which words are matched up with others, it'll be heavily debated and we got to go to a vote. And sometimes it's a unanimous, like, let's move it forward.
Do you, I'm a stats teacher. Do you randomly put the words in, or do you? Yeah. Okay.
I just write them down in there, and then we put it up on the board. And, I think we're going to do this on a Zoom call probably at the beginning of June, because we're going to have to get our off season, language started. And then that's
this is actually a good thing to do in a Zoom, in my opinion. This might actually even be easier because you're all going to be in little squares and you can see it and you can talk. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
No, not at all.
I love that.
So that's kind of just like how we start the program culturally. And then, so just before I show you kind of some of the stuff we do on the court, one of the things that I learned as a coach, and I think that any young coach or even, anyone in the business, whether you're an assistant or a head coach, is the language of how you communicate with your players needs to be uniform across the board, from your head coach all the way through your entire staff, all the way down to maybe a volunteer or a manager or whoever's involved on the court. So, we say, for us, strong side. Some people say ball side. For us, it's strong side. And all my assistants know that. So there's not a lot of questions where if I'm referring to ball side, it's not, confusing them. We call it the strong side. We talk about the slot. We talk about the short corner. All the language we have in our preseason coaches retreat. We talk a lot about what the terminology that I feel comfortable using and what I obviously want to hear what they use. And then we make sure that our key talking points, we do give them like a little glossary in their playbooks so they can refer back to it if they are confused after practice. But in the early part of the season, we emphasize the terminology that we're going to be using.
I think a couple of things. First of all, because you only have them for the short period, those things matter, and words matter. Like, words matter in life. Words matter on the court, and I think that's a great point you're making, and that's even for a high school coach. I may only have them for a year, and then I got to give them to the varsity coach for a couple of years or something like that. I think that's really important for young coaches, that words matter. You just have to come up with a uniform. Are you talking ball side, strong side? Are you talking help line? How do you refer to things on the court? I think are really important, and off the court too. I think that's great.
And I think that you got to think about it like, all right, there's a couple things that I need to be able to relay to them about, how are we going to handle ball screens, hedge, double, stuff like that.
Right.
How are we going to handle hit the slot, whatever you want to do, and think about it as if you have a 30-second timeout, and no 30-second timeout, unless you're on national television, is actually a 30-second timeout. It's more like a 15-second timeout with the refs asking you to get out of the timeout, 15 seconds in.
Right.
So if you have about 15 to 20 seconds to bring your kids in and say, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and they turn to an assistant and say, coach, you want to make sure that your language, everyone is understanding exactly what you're saying. And if they ask anybody else, that player won't say, oh, he said strong side, and then the other player's like, wait, is that ball side? It's just it's very clear and concise. So everything that we do, we try not to over talk. We try to be, precise in how we communicate to them. And if they don't understand, I'd rather reiterate the terminology than, get away from it just to move on. So I think it's really important.
I think that's great. I think that's a great takeaway.
So once we kind of have that in order, who we are, our identity and everything like that, then we kind of move into, beginning of the season practice and practice throughout the year. So I brought a couple practice plans and drills that I can show everybody.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So just before I go into the practice drills, one of the things that someone asked me, it's actually during this time, and it's funny because I was glad I was able to say yes to the question, but they asked me, Coach, if you were to have an emergency and miss the first 15 minutes of practice, would your players know what they're supposed to do if there wasn't supervision, or if, God forbid, or if the assistant was there but didn't know, like, would they know what to do? Do they know your culture? And also, do they know your system? So I'll bring up a practice plan that I can show you guys.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then I can kind of walk you through it.
As you're doing that, I'm going to ask you a question as you're doing that. When do you practice plan?
So I usually practice plan, like going into the season, I usually get my first like 2 or 3 practices, and then everything is, that night after I have a chance to watch film of practice and, I've had a chance to review everything, then I'll kind of that evening put something into place and then review it in the morning. But I don't plan too far ahead just because so many things can change in a practice that I could have a great idea and, it just doesn't come out to be that way. So, I like to be able to be, fluid and work on different things. So
I get that. And what do you think one of the more important things in practice is?
So I think at the junior college level, the 2 most important things in practice are, skill development, making sure that we improve on our skills, because, I could teach offense all day, but the ability to actually get out there and play the game, you got to be able to fit in anybody's system if you're trying to go to the next level. So skill development is extremely important. And then also, I think it's very important communication. That's got to be instilled in these kids from day one. And I think any coach at any level will tell you, whether they're the pros or whether, they're high school, that the best teams win because they communicate. And it's on the offensive end and on the defensive end. So we are so focused on, I tell my kids, and maybe I'm wrong for this, but this is just my style of coaching, but I tell my kids all the time, if you don't know what to say, just yell. So if you forget in the moment, you're supposed to say ball, 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 just yell something else.
Right.
Just yell whatever in your head. And I've had a kid run out on the ball and be like, help, help, help. And that is not a good idea. But if you want to run out on the ball and you're not screaming ball, but you're like, got it, got it, got it, then scream, got it, got it, got it.
Right.
Because at least we're constantly communicating.
My college coach always had me call ball. I love that. I love calling, because then everyone knows who's guarding the ball, which is relatively important defensively.
Yeah.
So
in transition and as young players coming into JUCO, maybe they come from a system where, calling ball wasn't very, wasn't demanded, and we demand that. So if you're getting used to it, then say anything that indicates to us that you have the ball so that your other players can understand. And like I said, referring back to terminology, is we'll kind of go back to it. So
okay, so as you pull it up, and we'll keep talking. If you could do 3 things at practice, what would you do? If you could only do 3 as you're pulling this up.
If I could only do 3 of the things that I already do, like 3 of my drills.
Just 3. I'm just saying you can only do 3 things at practice. What do you think are the 3 most important things? I'll reword it.
We're going to shell drill. We're going to.
So defense. Yep.
Yeah, we're going to shell drill. We're going to get game-like shots up. And we're going to run in transition.
Okay. And if I'm sitting at your practice and I've come to watch, what would I notice?
You would probably notice the intense demand for communication, the intensity on defense, and the emphasis on rebounding and outletting the ball and pitch ahead and getting going. Trying to get up the floor before the defense has a chance to set. That we have a lot of emphasis on getting into our stuff quickly but also under control. And then I think what you'd also see is, and I get very into practice. That's my safe place. I get to be me, and I love the environment. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of, I don't know if the word's entertainment, but there's a lot of quality conversations and stuff, and you know, pumping each other up, where I think that we do a great job of creating both a very competitive environment, but an enjoyable one.
Do you have any hints on transitions between things? Because I always find that's a difficult thing for younger coaches, the transition from A to B, B to C.
So actually, it's funny. There's a few ways, you can do it. For us, usually our transition, we do everything with a clock going at all times.
Okay.
So they understand that as soon as the drill's over, if we say, you got a chance to get water, that clock's going. So they pretty much are operating on a time-controlled system. So it doesn't take us a lot to transition.
Okay.
But usually before we end every drill, someone will have to hit a free throw. Otherwise, we'll get up and down the floor, or we'll do some sort of calisthenics or something like that.
Okay.
So we try to break everything on a free throw, but an intense free throw where there's, Phil Martelli said over the quarantine, he was talking about not using the word punishment, and I agree with Phil in that. And then, so we use the word consequence, so that there's a consequence. And again, you hate losing and you hate missing, so that focus is still there.
Okay, I love that. Okay, yeah, pull this up. Let's look at.
So I'll walk you through some of these drills. This is, I'll show you one or two practice plans. Obviously, this is one of them early on in the season. So you'll see, we have our form shooting, which is something that is a non-negotiable every day. We'll go through that. 5-minute shooting and Iowa speed layups and 4-line transition. That first 3 drills of practice are every practice. Transition may slide down the road, that may slide depending on if it's a day after the game or something, but I can promise you that, if you were to ask my kids how we're going to start practice, they'll tell you 5-minute shooting and Iowa speed layups, and I'll show you what they both are.
Okay.
For me, the most important thing is in our practices that the first 2 drills include a massive amount of communication, and that they're high energy or as close to being a live drill as possible, which is why we have our 4-line transition.
I'll just stop for a second for the young coaches listening. It's for someone that's taught 30 years in a classroom, how you start your first 5 minutes of your class matter. How you start your first 5 minutes of your practice matter, because it's going to set the tone for the next hour and a half, 2 hours. And that's what I think Coach was getting at, is like he's setting tone early. It's easier to dial back than to dial up. From an old dog is basically what I'm telling you. Yeah.
And I would agree with you 100%. And we do these things because those are part of, the demands that we ask of them. So we do them at a fast pace so that when we get into the second half of practice, they've been going. I'd rather have them slowing down, towards the third part of our practice, to, slow down while we go through our scout real quick and then amp it back up to finish practice. So, obviously practice plans for us change, whether we got to travel the next day, if it's a home game, if we got a day off, whatever it may be. So, this is just kind of a look. We'll go through, our basics, get through transition, and we go straight into about 20 minutes of defense. Early on in the season, we're teaching our zone man half court. I like to teach in segments of 20, maybe 25 minutes max if you're going over scout or zone or offense. I think after 20 minutes, me as a young coach, I've never been with a coach who stays on a topic for more than 20 minutes. A lot of my drills are maxed out at 12 minutes. But when it comes to like teaching zone, man, that kind of stuff and walking through, I would say between 16 and 20 minutes is usually where we max out.
Okay.
And then
it's an attention thing too, I'm telling you.
Yeah. And I think, maintaining that competitive edge through a full practice at the college level is difficult. And if you can replicate it at any level, it's amazing. So you've got to kind of find a balance of competitive drills, skill work, and then the right time to teach things where they're not too tired to learn, but they need that opportunity to catch their breath and they can focus on you.
So so people that are listening, he's opening up something that says, this is a website, it looks like, Practice Planner Live. So tell me about Practice Planner Live. I've not heard about this.
So I guess they're going to get a free promo.
They are going to get a free promo, but I'm just about trying to help people. So whatever, if it's good, it's good. If it's whatever.
Fantastic. So you can get a free trial, but I think it costs us like $150 or something. to have it for the full year.
So
It's
it's the math teacher. It's the math teacher that sees the pie chart that starts freaking out. Like there's a pie chart that basically says, how much you're working on each specific thing, right? Offense, defense, shooting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what you can
that.
do is I'll kind of walk you through it
Yeah.
especially for those who are going to watch it. So what it does is as you input your drills over the first couple practices, it asks you to categorize them and save them. So once you do that, you can start to type in a drill and it'll just pop up. So I'll actually create a plan after I show it so you can see it. But when you're done with the plan, it'll tell you how much percentage of time you've allocated to, different things, whether it's, so you categorize your shooting drills under shooting. So, it'll show me that, when it came to, how much time do we spend 27% of our time on shooting in practice.
Yay for you. That is a piece of the pie that and I'm a former shooter, and there's a shooter that lives in my house, and that is something I battle with, is finding time for shooting. And that's great in my opinion.
I appreciate it. And you can see like some of these other drills fit in, and then like some of our, there's some specifics that we focus on, like layups.
And how does it hold the drills? Does it just give the drill a name, or does it hold like a?
So you input it. So I'll show you actually.
Okay.
I'll run a quick demo.
Okay.
So you just would go to create plan. You'd kind of enter your practice plan name and your quote of the day, your emphasis, any announcements, the length of time. So let's just put in a 1 hour practice real quick. And start time at 1 p.m. We'll put in a 1 hour practice so that people can see.
Yep.
And then what you would do is, I put in a ton of drills. So it just, every time you put in a drill, it saves it. So if I'm going to start my practice with ball handling skills, I'm just going to drop down the menu, click ball handling skills, put the category as ball handling, which pops up. And then it'll tell you have 40 minutes remaining, because right now it's entered in as 20. So I'll just put it in as, 5 minutes of that.
Okay.
And then click more lines. So great. So then
then they know that the drill, though. They're not going to give you a diagram of the drill or anything like that.
You can add diagrams, and when I add new things to practice, you can click over here to the media section, and you can add pictures of your drills if it's a new drill for you as a coach, or if it's a new drill for your staff, you can put the pictures here. It also allows you to add practice teams. So we do a lot of stuff where we enter practice teams so that we know ahead of time who's on which team.
And how many girls are on your roster?
We carry 15.
And so do you go 3 groups normally, or do you go 2 groups?
Most of the time we go 2 with some subs, and depending on injuries and managing minutes and stuff like that, things will change, whether it's white and blue or starters versus bench or however. So so that's kind of basically how it goes.
You print this out then?
Yeah, so there's a printed format actually. So
let me see what that looks like, because I'm a big, I got to have the paper there, because then I write notes on it. I tuck it in the back of my, I'm like typical coach guy, but it's and it looks all wrinkled up.
Just to kind of, here's a Sunday practice. I'm not sure if this one's as detailed, but yes. So here, there's some notes in it, and you can see I've had the teams written out on it.
Okay.
So it drops down. So when you print it, it comes out as a 1-pager. And this is what it looks like.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
So it's practiceplannerlive.com. You get a free trial to mess around with it. And you can use it for the first month of your season. Yeah. And then go from there. But if anybody does want it, I'm happy to send out the link, anything else I can do.
Yeah.
So, so just to kind of talk you through,
let's talk through one.
Talk through some drills. So we'll actually use this because this has our fundamental drills that you'll see in a lot of our practices. So 5 minutes shooting, I'll kind of bring up my whiteboard real quick.
Okay.
Very basic. You put 5 minutes on the clock. You get 2 balls every other, and pretty much the first 5 minutes starts on the clock, comes around, guard comes around, gets a pass, makes a layup. Then the guard leaves the below the block, gets a pass from the next person, layup, rebound, and you continue to do that in the line for 30 seconds. Now, when the clock shows 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the whole line takes a step back, and now it's bank shots from the block.
They're basically curling. We do this kind of as a warm-up drill. Yeah. Like,
and then what's different about this is they have to hit a goal. So then it becomes in between the elbow and the block, which we call our mid-range. Then we get to our elbow shots, and then we get to our three-pointers. And then when you get to 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that's kind of your halfway point, instead of asking them to, move back down the way they came, they've got to then take the whole drill and drag it down to this side of the court all at one time.
Ooh, I like that.
So then they work their way back in from the three-point line, back to elbow, back to mid-range, to bank shot, to layup. And what you'll find is the better teams don't catch energy only at the end when they see they have 80, and if they make all 20 layups, they can get 100. They'll have that energy early on in the practice, early on in the drill, where the first 30 seconds they're trying to get 26 made layups in 30 seconds.
Okay.
So that's our 5-minute shooting.
How many you try to get?
So our goal at the beginning of the season, we set it at about 110.
Okay.
For us, and this season, I think the highest we got was 128.
And you change that. You change that as you see that they can reach specific goals. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see yourself, like our team. From the previous coach to myself, like this year we scored significantly more points per game, but you could see it develop over the course of the season in the drill. Like we were hitting 90 to 100 in the first month, and then this becomes such a ritual that, come, December, we're making 115 a practice, which is, and we'll restart it if we have to once or twice just to make sure that we get good reps out of it. But we always say the same thing: sprint to the spot, take your time on the shot. Sprint to your spot, take your time on the shot.
Well, I love
that's
that.
That's our emphasis on that. So then to kind of walk you through one of the tougher drills that we do, which is I stole it from Coach Mitch Oliver at Albertus, the men's coach. So this is called, we call it Albertus transition because that's where I stole it from. So your yellow group over here, you take a group of 5, and those are your offensive team, and you stick them at the half court, and you as a coach stand on the sideline with a ball.
Okay.
Then you take your defensive team in blue, put them across the foul line extended, and you put 8 seconds on your clock. Now, when I hit the go on the clock, or when our manager hits go, the 8 seconds begin to tick down. Everybody who's standing on the foul line extended has to run to the baseline as a team, touch the opposite baseline with 2 hands, and then come back. Now, it doesn't matter when that 8 second expires. Whenever that 8 seconds expires, the coach passes the ball to somebody at the half court, and they can take off in transition regardless of where their defenders are in the sprint back to the cross half court. And what you'll find is the first time you do the drill, everybody will sprint down, and halfway down the court on their way back up, they see they got 3 seconds, so they'll start yelling out, "Oh, I got so and so, I got her, I got her." But that never works once you've done the drill 3 or 4 times because you're exhausted. So 2 girls might be getting back and need to pick up different people. So what I've learned is,
so they got to move because they're going from free throw line to the other baseline and then trying to get to the half court. So they're going, over a full length of, that's crazy.
It has a lot of intensity to it, but it forces them to talk about, like, pick up ball first. One of the things actually that I was lucky enough, we were talking about it yesterday, and I'm sure that I'm going to use it now, is the Milwaukee Bucks do this thing called Find Most Dangerous, which is what they call FMD. So who is that person? So once you pick up the ball, your next job is to pick up your Find Most Dangerous. So who's the most dangerous player on the floor that's not guarded? And then for us, obviously, most coaches will say, last person back, go pick up something on the weak side so that you can cover the ball. You can cover it if the ball gets
I think for high school coaches or youth coaches, that's probably even bigger because, in the NBA, there's more guys that are dangerous. As you move down, it's like stop ball and then find their guy or gal. Like there's usually one on the court that's going to kill you. Yeah, I love that.
So those are like 2 of the drills that are staples of what we do, because I kind of talked about transition defense and offense, and I talked about shooting. I have a ton of other drills. The other one that I brought to share with you was So we like to do a lot of live situational stuff early on in the season.
Okay.
And I brought 4 examples. I'm going to bring them up. These are what we call, and I'll walk you through them, but these are what we call our live cards. So there's a stack of index cards on the table every practice. And there's about 100 of them, and every index card has a different situation written on it: time remaining, quarter, timeouts, fouls.
My stack's about this. My stack's about this big. It's crazy. I don't want to know what's in the stack too. Yeah.
Right. So we take that, and we, at the end of practice, depending on how much time we dedicate to live scenarios outside of our regular live work, I'll say to one of the players, please pick a live card. So they'll pick it and they'll read it out. So for this one, you have blue team 61, white score 60. There's 1 minute left in the 1 minute 30 left in the fourth quarter. White's down 1. They got 2 30s. They're in a man-to-man full court press with 1 foul to give, and they're inbounding the ball.
Right.
Blue, who's up 1, has no timeouts. They're in a man-to-man half, and they have no fouls to give. And then we put that situation up on the scoreboard, and we play it out.
Yeah, we'll do also. We'll even add to things that coach has on here. We'll say whether there's bonus or not bonus. We'll talk about on our cards. We actually have who's in foul trouble, who's not in foul trouble. You can make these cards as specific as you want. What I tell, and it's fun. I have a bunch that are typed up, but coaches is written out. Mine are on index cards. Because when my kids were little, I was just basically, that's what I would just sit there when I was waiting at gymnastics class, and I would just write out different examples. And that's how I got my cards. It's like everyone wastes time. Shoot, half of us are wasting time watching Netflix. So when you're sitting there, you can make these cards up. You all know different situations. But I love that. Yeah.
So you make a great point. And so I just think a different one. So just a more unique card, obviously, because the rest of them are similar to end of games, but this is one that we use situationally, which is our time remaining, and this is second quarter. So there's 6 minutes left in the second quarter, and this index card shows that blue is up by 11 with 2 timeouts left, man-to-man.
Hey, Coach. Hope you're enjoying the video. Couple things. Make sure you subscribe and like. That's the first thing. Leave some comments down below. Second thing is, if you want me to help you fill up your showcase just like this one, go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. 14-day free trial. Hopefully not too many of those silver ones. Let's head back to the video.
They're in the bonus, and they're pressing in a 1-2-2-3 quarter, while white is down 11 with 1:30 in a man-to-man, 3 fouls to give, and they've been pressing full court man-to-man. And so sometimes we'll coach, but a lot of times we ask the teams to coach themselves through the scenario. So we'll tell them, if you draw this card, they'll say to me, well, what are we supposed to do, Coach? We're supposed to play 3 quarters? No. I want you to cut this game to a 4-point game at the end of the second quarter. So I want to be within 4. Doesn't matter to me whether it's 32-28 or it's 42-30, 42-38. Just get this game to a 4-point game in 6 minutes. So they'll focus on that goal, which will change up a little bit of that whole end of game competitive edge versus we've got to have the mentality that we can come back from anything. And we'll be able to refer to this in timeouts. We'll be in a game down 12, and I'll say, listen, we have been practicing cutting leads in 4-minute segments. This is exactly what you need to do now. You've coached yourselves to do it by yourself without my help. Now I'm here to help you. Let's get it done and try and cut this down. So that's kind of a couple
things. You have a blue and a white. Are one of them like your starting group or non-starting group? And
usually white is our starters.
Okay. And do you ever have white do stuff that you're not going to normally do? Like, let's say you're a man team and they're all of a sudden in a zone. I mean, are you putting things on your cards that only you do? Or are you putting...
That's an interesting question. I think a lot of the stuff that you'll see is stuff that we do, but we do have cards in there that'll ask them to get into a 3-2, just because I want to challenge them to try and figure out new things by themselves. So there are some cards in that'll they're in a 1-2-1-1, which we never run, and their response will be like, what are we supposed to do with this? Right. And it's more of just, I'm not looking for you to be perfect, or as good as you are at some of the other situations. I'm looking for you guys to navigate through this together, because situationally maybe you'll learn something about your team. Maybe they'll just really play a 3-2 well together and coach themselves through it. You kind of get to see the more vocal leaders in that process. So, as for drills and that kind of stuff, that's kind of some of the stuff we do. And I figured I would bring here to share today.
I love that.
And then just one last thing, we do 2 drills. One, I think everybody does perfect defense, which is we put 30 seconds on the shot clock. Obviously, any mistake, not fouls necessarily. It's more, did someone beat you to the lane? Were you one pass away? The whistles go off very quickly. You've got to legitimately be perfect. So whatever your principles are as a defensive team, no lane penetration, fronting the post. If someone doesn't do that for a split second, you reset the shot clock to 30. And then the other thing we do is we do this. It's a very relaxed, but it's called pressure free throws, where we stick the whole team on the free throw line, on the baseline or around the free throw line. And I tell them that you're up 5 with, 6 free throws to go. And if you make a free throw, it's +1. If you miss a free throw, it's -1. And everybody's got to go through, or however many shots I allow them to take. So I'll say it's a tie game, guys. Everybody's got to take 2 free throws. Tie game. If you lose, we're going up and back. And if you make it, you go up a point. You miss it, now your team is losing. So we do that a lot.
And when do you do that in practice? When do you do that in practice? You do it at the end? When do you do that?
Most of the time, to be honest with you, we'll do it towards the end of practice, but we will do it if we're losing focus to regain the team, to lock in and say, hey, quick pressure free throws. Let's go. We're down by 5. Everybody's getting 2 shots.
So that's a good thing. Do you have any tidbits for refocusing your team? I love that. That just popped in my head. I love that. Do you have anything that you specifically do?
We have a couple things that we do to refocus. In my practice, I give my captains 2 timeouts. So they're allowed 2 timeouts of practice. So if they feel like things are going south before I start to, feel like they are, they can call a timeout. Coaches have to step off the court. It's their court for 60 seconds or 30 seconds, depending on what they want. And we'll let them talk it over. And, that's just something I've done to kind of build camaraderie. I'm sure it's not original, but I know that for us, certainly.
Here's what I've started to do, and I don't do this every day, but I actually run practice like a game. So we have a pregame, how you have pregame warm up, you have a pregame. We play halves in Wisconsin. So I have a first half, then I have a halftime where it's more like, what do you do at halftime? It's more cerebral. You're talking about it, get a water break. Then we do the second half, and then we do post game. And during that practice, which I run in the first half, I'll work on stuff that we'll work on offense and defense, whatever. But I give them 5 timeouts. I give them 3 fulls and 2 3 full, and 2 30s, and then they can use them wherever they want.
I love that.
And it works. It's like it breaks up the monotony of practice a little bit sometimes. And sometimes I'll even have them run out and do our warm up we do before a game. It's like, we're going to have practice today, but here's how we're going to do it. It's just a unique way to kind of what is coach crazy? It's like, well, no, we're still going to do the same stuff. It's just how I'm breaking it up. It's like giving them a little different twist. But I love the timeout thing.
You got to be creative. I think that college basketball season, especially, it's almost 5 months on the court, 4 months on the court. So you got to be creative in how your ways. I mean, we've got a ton of different things that we've done over the course of time that I've seen other coaches do, different, refocus things, competitive things, or whether it's something like lighthearted, but we certainly do a lot to re-engage, because there's a lot to learn every day.
It's crazy.
And as a team.
All right. Anything else? I have a bunch of questions for you too. So if you have time.
No, that pretty much covers what our, basic, everything looks like pretty much. I'm happy to, answer some questions for sure.
Okay. So what do you think the biggest change you've seen in the game is?
In the game?
Yeah.
Well, I think
or with players. Doesn't matter.
I think that the biggest change in the game that I've seen over the course of my career is, I think that and I think everybody will say this, so I'm not going to touch on how the generation is different and how the kids are different. I think that's an easy one.
Yeah.
I think the use of perimeter play and the focus on perimeter play has certainly become bigger. And for different coaches, that style of play is great. But I think that at the high school levels, where you don't have necessarily, not every coach has a strategy. You'll see some players who will come into our gym and their coaches let them jack up threes, and they're not even a 20% shooter.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what do you just took that shot 8 times in practice, you haven't made one. Well, that's coach tells me to shoot it all the time. Well, coach isn't here anymore.
Right.
You need to go to the basket. And I think the good coaches always preach it, but the whole shoot your way out, like that's what I tell my kids. If you're in a slump, shoot your way out.
Right.
Go to the rack, get a layup. Can't get a layup, get a foul, hold the ball at the foul line for a couple seconds, enjoy that feeling of having the basketball, take a free throw, take another one, get a little rhythm to what you're doing. So I think the perimeter game at the lower levels has become, like high school and middle school, has become like, just jack them up. And I think that has affected some players coming in who maybe they're hoisting shots up from their waist, or their shot form is, they haven't nailed down the mid-range, or don't even have a left hand, but they can shoot free throw. They can
right.
shoot.
Well, yeah, and the loss of the mid-range, I think the loss of the mid-range is going to swing back, to be honest with you. I tell my son, I said, everyone's going to the rim and everyone's shooting threes. I said, if you get a mid-range, you will get open shots because people are giving those. I mean, but it has to be like you're shooting a layup. I mean, it has to be like you're hitting it 60% of the time. But if you work on that part of the game, it's just lost. It's like, when you watch like The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, he's shooting mid-ranges a lot, and you know what he's doing? Watch. I went back and watched some of his old games. He used the backboard a lot.
Yeah, 100%.
A lot.
I mean, I tell my point guard all the time, like, watch Mike Bibby. Guy made a living from mid-range, hitting mid-range shots as a point guard. And I know that right now it's, a little bit of lost art. I know that some of our guards will come in and they'll take like a 12-foot floater or something ridiculous. And I'm like, why not just pull up and shoot the mid-range? And it's because they're not comfortable with the shot. So that's why in our 5-minute shooting and in a lot of our shooting drills, we'll take 1 dribble pull up, 2 dribble pull up, that mid-range shot, because that, in my opinion, that is a huge part of the game.
It is. If you could do one offense or one defense, what would you do?
Well, I mean, I've always kind of been the same coach my whole time. So offensively, we're a ball screen offense team, and defensively, we have always been, a man-to-man. That's just kind of how I am.
Okay. How do you defend ball screens?
So I like to tell my players that whatever we're doing as a team. A lot of them like to debate, well, I could have gotten over, I could have gotten under. So we pretty much do the same thing. We're going over as much as we possibly can. Obviously, if it's a really great shooter, we're trying to lock and trail. And then on the other end, if depending on the situation and who we're playing, I've been trying to teach icing the ball screens, because I'm getting higher level players right now. So icing is not easy, and it certainly leaves a lot up for error, but I have some very athletic guards and posts that can do that sort of thing. So we have been icing those screens a little bit, which has helped us, prevent getting switched into all sorts of bad situations.
Yeah, and the switch isn't as big a deal at the high school level. I don't think it's
Right.
First of all, because half of them can't post pass, so it doesn't really matter. So you're sitting in a gym in July, watching a summer AAU tournament with 8 billion kids. First of all, I don't know how you guys do it, to be honest with you, because everyone can pick out the top kid. Like in tryouts, I can pick out the top kid. Michael Jordan walks in, I can pick out him. I can even pick out the top 10 kids. But after that, it seems like noise to me. Like, because you're not getting the top kid, because the top kid's getting a D2 or D1 offer probably.
Right.
So you have to work your way down. That's what I don't know how you do it. It's like, it looks like all those 7 kids all look the same. So my question to you is, what do you look for in a recruit?
Well, I think there's a few things. Like, generically, what do we look for? Generically, I want to see, how do you interact with your teammates? Someone always told me, watch how they interact with their parents. If they'll talk to their parents one way, you won't be surprised if they talk to you that way in practice when they come play for you. What is their body language like in warm-ups? Are their headphones off and they're warming up with the team, or do they have AirPods on or Beats on and they're warming up with their team, but they can't hear anything going on around them? Do they jog into timeouts? All that kind of stuff. Body language is extremely important for us. And, how many possessions do they take off? That I'm always curious to watch. Like, is she just going to take off this possession and not get back because she needs a break, or is she going to, get a sub, come back, and not take off any possession? So those are, some of the fundamental basic things. But when I really look specifically, I'm looking to see defensively, can you keep your position in front? Like, if I bring you in, can you guard, 1, 2, 3 in my league if that's your position, or if you're a post, can you guard 4 and 5? So I watch that very carefully. Can you keep the ball in front of you? Are you able to, obviously, like we just talked about, are you able to switch screens? Are you able to go under? Do you fight over? Do you recognize, the type of player you're playing against and learn from your mistakes? So, okay, you go under and she steps back and hits a 3 2 times on you. So what should your next move be? It probably should not be to drop under the screen. So I look for that IQ stuff. And then I also am very careful about, I don't think you need to have the perfect shot form. A lot of coaches will tell you if it's not broke, don't fix it. Everybody shoots the ball a different way.
Jamal Wilkes used to shoot this way, but the perfect, here's what I tell, this is the math teacher in me. The perfect form will allow you to take less shots to perfect it. The bad form is just going to take you more time. I mean, you can have the worst form in the world. If you sit and shoot 8 hours a day for 7 years, you're going to be able to shoot, but it's going to take you longer. So form is, like my son, I said this in a podcast. When he was younger, he had a little dip. He'd get the ball, he'd dip, and then he'd shoot. Well, I left it because he wasn't strong enough. And then I think it was between his freshman and sophomore year. It's like, all right, we got to break this whole thing down because you're just not going to be able to get the shot off at the next level because you're just giving the defense too much time. So we had to tweak it. But it wasn't like, I didn't like elbow has to be like, I don't care if his elbow's out a little bit. Those are, all that stuff. I think people worry about that too much sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we can correct a lot of it in practice on the shooting machine and the shooting drill, and we can change some of the stuff, backspin on the ball or shot arc. We can be as specific as we want. So I'm just looking to see, can you get a shot up? Are you taking smart shots? And can you defend to your position? And then
I think I'm telling you, that is the difference between a really good D3 player and a D1 player. Like the D1 player, like, you better be able to you got to be able to defend. It's like the NBA. I got to be able to defend. I got to be able to defend you. Like, I got to be able to stop you. Yes, we got to do help side. We got to do all our man defensive. I mean, shoot, I'm in Wisconsin. Everyone knows pack line. Shoot.
Right.
So it originated here with the Bennett's and Bo Ryan. So don't worry about pack line. So, but you better be able to keep that person in front of you. And that, I think that's what parents don't really understand sometimes too. Your son or daughter is really good, but they can't defend at that level. If they can't defend at that level, they can't play. Because you're not going to gimmick. Coach K ain't going to gimmick Roy Williams. They're not going to gimmick each other.
Right. You're always trying to find a way, coaches are always running, whether it's complex or simple offenses, they kind of trying ways to free up their better players. So you need to be able to find a way to read situations and lock down to be able to be an effective player at the next level. And then I think consistency, that is a big deal for me. Are you consistent? It comes in a lot of layers. Are you a consistent shooter, or can you be a consistent shooter? Are you a consistent defender? Are you consistent in your hustle? Because I always tell my kids, if you're inconsistent, number one, it's bad habits, and inconsistency leads to those bad habits, but also it's an indicator that you've got a lot of work to do to, break those things and become a better player. Like, my point guard shooting, 20% is not consistent enough. She's got to be a higher percentage shooter. And, we work on that, and she's done an excellent job of fixing that scenario and improving. And, I'm not asking a kid to come in as a 40%, in the post. No, not by all means, not where we are, but I am asking them to be a goal of theirs, to work on being more consistent. So.
And I don't know if you agree with this, but I think everybody can be a shooter. I'm not sure everyone can be a scorer. Like, everyone can you can get on a machine and you can become a shooter. Like, if you take enough shots, you can become a shooter. It doesn't mean you're going to get the shot off. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to be a scorer. But most kids can become shooters if they put the time in my opinion, especially with the machine right now.
I think kids can learn how to shoot better. I think they can improve their shooting, but I think when it comes down to it, the better shooters with the quick release and the form, those are really who are the ones that rise above and are consistent.
Oh, they're unique. They are definitely unique.
Yeah.
So what do you consider your strength and your weaknesses as a coach?
I think strengths as a coach, one of the things is organization and, attention to detail. I watched a lot of film on ourselves. I watched a lot of film on our opponents, more so on ourselves just because we're at the junior college level and I need to understand what I can do to perfect our players and everything like that. But I also do like to watch a lot of other film to prepare us to win. And I think, offensively, I've always been a great offensive coach in teaching kind of how to improve your offense. And like I spoke about, consistency. Areas that I'd like to improve, I've always been a pressing guy. So, during this quarantine, I have spent hours and hours and hours on, working with different coaches at different levels on specific presses that I've run. I'm a big ball screen offense guy. So I spent time working with some of the coaches at different divisions.
What presses?
So I'm big on 1-2-2, 2-2-1. Those are the two that I like to see. At least I find as a stall,
and then you
or
fall
as
back
a
to
pressure.
man then?
We do both. We'll fall back to man, or depending on who we're playing, if we have to, we'll go into a zone, a matchup zone, or something like that. So,
Are your players tend to be long and athletic?
I wouldn't say long. I mean, we didn't have any height our first year, so but we have very aggressive and athletic defenders.
Have
So
you thought of the 1-3-1?
we do, but it leaves too much open in the corner. And in our league, you've got some very, very, very talented shooters who will just make you pay too quickly. So, and I don't like, with our limited height, I try not to isolate.
Yeah,
too much stuff
you gotta
going
have a
on
little.
there.
You gotta have a little length. That's why I asked about the length. If you got some length,
Yeah.
you can trap that corner too, and they ain't gonna get it.
Right. With the 1-2-2, my point guard can pretty much funnel anybody up the floor into a trap, and I like that. And
I like
also
that too.
reducing the amount of time players have on the shot clock to just get through their stuff. So as a stall,
Yeah, and
press,
the
it's
thing with
also
the
really good.
1-2-2 and the 2-2-1 is you can do stunts out of it where I'm just trying to take clock off, or I'm trying to. Yeah, I mean the 1-3-1's a different beast. It's more of a change up. You gotta, and if you got like, for the guys side, if you got a bunch of high school, if you're like 6'4", 6'5" long guys, who you can't see angles because you don't necessarily trap, you gap them so they can't get close enough to make the pass. That's why I asked if you were long. What do you think the hardest thing to teach is?
Hardest thing to teach. That's a tough question, but also a really good question. I actually might ask that question next time I talk to somebody today. I think the toughest thing to teach in basketball, I don't think it's on the court. I don't think it's a specific fundamental. Like I think teaching pivot foot, stuff like that.
It's hard.
It's hard, but it can be done.
Yeah.
I think, when it comes to teaching IQ, you've got to try a lot of different things. And I specifically done a lot of work with my guards I want them to be able to get an inbounds pass, look up the floor and see, okay, it looks like they're in a 2-3, or be able to recognize what's in front of them, or, to be able to start to be able to read different things offensively. Like, oh, I know that if they're hedging, I'm going to tell them, and I'm going to tell them in timeouts and scouts and pre-games and halftime talks and everything like that. But I think your ability as a player to be able to read what is happening and understand the different things you can do and not be very robotic is really important. Like if you notice that every time you set a ball screen on our guard, even though it's not within our offense, their switch is giving you a great post up, then we got to go to that. And I'll tell you to, but the ability to recognize that quickly and do it on your own, or find if you're coming up to the slot, if we're on the weak side and you're flashing the slot and that's working, to stay with it and do it. Finding those reads is really difficult to teach kids who are used to coming out of just a regular system. So.
What I have found is there's different types of learners too. Like that's what you have to realize as a teacher, because coaches are teachers, is some kids are visual ones. They need to see tape. They need to watch tape and tape. Other kids need to read things and see things, or some kids actually need to physically do. I mean, they all learn. That's the hard part. As a coach and a teacher, is you got to figure out what makes Susie or Johnny tick, and then you got to feed the monster. Like I'm a film guy. I love watching film. So give me film, and I like reading too, but I think I remember things better if I see it. Like you going through those drills, boom, those are in my brain now. Because I saw it. If you'd have just said it, it'd have been a little bit harder for me. So I would agree, Coach. You're the first person to say that, but I think that is really that's a hard hard thing to teach, and it's not necessarily an X and O thing.
Right.
So is there one coaching moment that we could dive into for the listeners that they could learn something? Like, is there a moment, a failure, a success, something that the listeners that we could dive into a little deeper?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about situationally in a game and
anything you think that would be beneficial for a coach listening. Just that's why I kind of leave it open ended. Everyone kind of goes down a different road with this question.
You know what? I would talk about, especially I'm not could be assistants, head coaches listening. So I think for younger coaches and more, and I learned this too, is like, let's talk real quick about anticipation, right? So me as a head coach, when I'm on the sideline, I'm instructing on what's going on, but my brain is 2-3 possessions ahead of where I'm at. Not too far to the point where I'm not focused on the moment, but anticipation is extremely important. Like in my head, I see the offense doing, X, Y, and Z, or my point guard, being able to come off the screen, hit the roller, pull up, take a shot. But so if that doesn't happen, or, she turns the ball over and gets back in transition, and now the score changes, or, now they start doubling her, like I'm always anticipating different things and how we can react to different things. So I think that, one of the things that's important, and I find it really important, is making sure that your best assistant coaches, and this is why I attribute the ability to be where I am, and I'm so grateful to be a head coach right now, and hopefully I'll continue to have success and, continues to grow. But I could attribute that ability to being able to anticipate as an assistant coach, anticipate and then talk to my head coach about what's going to happen. And I think we could have this conversation. I had a call a couple, 2 weeks ago where a friend of mine called and said, I think I'm, moving on from one of my assistants. When you were a great assistant when you were young, Jeremy, like, how would you have approached this situation? And he presented the situation. He said, I went in at halftime and I said to my team, we're gonna go to this because this is the new plan and this is what I'm confident in. And when the two of them walked out of the locker room, his assistant said to him, "That's not going to work." And he said, "Why?" And the assistant said, "It's just not going to work." So he said to me, "What would your reaction have been?" And I said, "First of all, if you're going in at halftime and you're drawing something up on the board without asking me, it more than likely means that you just spent the last quarter, if not the entire quarter, thinking about that as everything was unfolding. So you already in your mind have a plan of what you're drawing. So I'm not going to do anything to mess with your confidence."
Right.
Now, as an assistant, if I am going to address what you just changed, I'm going to have a solution. And I attribute this all to J.R. Fredette, who was my guy, my head coach at Albertus Magnus College. I was his assistant. I used to come in the office at like 9 a.m. and we'd be getting ready to go play St. Joe's of Maine, 2 days later. And we ran this hybrid defense, kind of like a shell box-like zone defense matchup. And he used to say to me, "Jeremy, what'd you do last night?" I went home and I watched film. I said, "All right, fine. So tell me how St. Joe's of Maine can beat our defense." And so I would have to be able to draw up different things that they did to show him that. So when my friend said to me, "Hey, what would you have reacted?" I said, "To be honest with you, if I thought it couldn't work, I would have come up to you after halftime and said, 'Hey, coach, I understand where you're going, but if they do, for example, if they run a high-low against what you just draw, or if they go into a 1-3-1 and their runner, they take their big girl and put her at the top, it's going to stop what you're drawing.'" Always having a solution and always, anticipating what's coming is how you're an effective coach, either as a head coach or an assistant.
It's so hard. People don't understand. You're not a baseball coach. Like baseball coaches, think about how much time they have to think during a baseball game. Basketball coaches don't. So and I always meet my assistants before we go in anyway, but I want input because and this is what I tell the young coaches, you want to find a place where I don't take all the input they give me. I've got 3 assistants, but I want their input. Like, this is working, this isn't working. Think about this, think about this. And then I decipher it. It's like I'm the code breaker, and they're just giving me all the information. And they're giving me solutions, and they're saying, "Ooh, this kid's really killing us from 3. The 1-3-1 won't work. That corner isn't." Like, okay, then I'll either cross it off or I'll stick with it. But I think you're right. My reaction would have been, well, if you don't think it's going to work, what do you think is that? My reaction would have been, okay, you don't think it's going to work. What do you think is going to work and why, as we're walking?
So that's my point.
Yeah, that's what I would have said. It's like, okay, you don't think it's going to work? Great. Give me a reason it's not going to work.
Right. I want a solution.
What's going to work? Yeah.
I want a solution. I want a reason, and I want a solution. Don't tell me. I don't. If you don't think it's going to work, that's great. In my head, I already see it unfolding a certain way.
Right.
So if you don't believe in what I got, that's fine, because I
want
to hear other
and
people.
when you've coached long enough, that's literally the discussion I would have had. It wouldn't have been mad. It would have been, okay, you don't think it's going to work? Great. What do you think's going to work and why? And then we would have had that discussion walking out of the tunnel, and then we would have stayed with what I was going to do. But then all of a sudden, if that's not working, then I would have gone, Kevin said this might work. Okay, let's try that. But then just saying it's not going to work is like, what are you talking about? Like,
right. There's plenty of things that I was thinking about that are not going to work. I already know that.
Right. I could tell you that I could put 4 people on the court. That's not going to work. That doesn't help me.
Exactly. 100%. I think that's especially if you're listening and you're a young coach,
right.
Your input, just because someone doesn't take your input, and I was an assistant for a long time, just because someone doesn't listen doesn't mean it's not important.
I'm listening. Trust me. I tell my coaches that all the time. I'm hearing you. It's just like, there can only be one captain. That's the problem. It's like someone has to finally make a decision, or there's gonna be mass chaos.
And I love, my assistants have always done a great job, and I trust my assistants if they say, hey, I think we need to go into this thing. If it feels right and you have a feel for the game and you're on the same page, by all means.
So here, this is. Let me lead into this question. So I'm at the point in my career where I probably talk 30% of practice, maybe. So what do you? Because I have assistants that I just trust. I have an assistant that can run our offense. I have another assistant that does our scouts. I have trust. That's what happens when you get a good staff. Early in my career, I was probably talking 90% of the time when things had to be discussed. But how do you run practices at your level with your assistants, and what responsibilities do they have? So
more than likely, I've always, at this level, younger assistants, it's a great opportunity for them to break in and get as much hands-on experience. So I do find myself, I do the majority of talking, no question. So I'm definitely not, like you had said, I'm not at a point where I'm able to do 30%. But I think that where my players and my program kind of have, there's a standard, is that, I like my assistants to be creative. If any of them can come up to me with, hey, I got a great chill, or hey, I picked something up, I'm all for it. Let's run it in practice and see what we get. Any idea is a good idea if you think it can help us get better. So, my assistants have the leeway to say, hey, we've been doing a lot of this. I think this drill can help. So let's do it. And I try to, with working with a lot of my assistants, and some of what head coaches have done for me, is, put me in charge of the scout team and say, hey, learn this film, run this stuff. And that's always great, and I'm grateful to have had, coaches who have let me learn like that. So I try to do the same thing. But when it comes to controlling the sets and substitutions, I think my assistants, my assistants have a very good feel for the game. So I have no problem if they tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, so-and-so's got to come out for so-and-so.
Right. They're tired and stuff. I do all the subs and I do all that, but they'll say, hey, Joe's dying out there, coach. And usually I'm watching faces. That's where I can kind of tell. I've done it long enough that it's like, ooh, they need a blow. They're just not with it. Or, other than the X and O part. But I love that. I think that's a great thing for assistants to do.
Yeah, and when I was with Jamie Angeli at City College, he was more in a place where our whole staff was pretty solid. So we had one guy that ran our substitutions. I ran the press defense and on our half court defense, where he kind of coached he was in charge of what the offense was, the overall scheme, and obviously if there was adjustments that need to be made. But he had me for defense, and he had our other assistant coach for for some of our offensive sets for quick hitters and stuff like that. So I think that it's all about trust. Again, it goes back to relationships. With my assistants, I think it's so important. Like, I believe in them. I believe that if they're around enough and they're working hard enough, they understand what I'm trying to do. And so, then you have to give them opportunity. I'm not one that, I don't want my assistant standing quietly at practice and not talking.
Right. And the thing is that, and this is probably a little different at your level, but I'm always looking for someone that's looking for another. I mean, they're looking for another job after you. They probably don't want to be an assistant for 35 years. So that's good. So your point is you're kind of like the old blacksmith. You're trying to teach them how to put the shoes on the horses, kind of thing, so that they can go open their own blacksmith store. Kind of, it's an apprentice thing at the college level almost in a lot of respects.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a funny story about Jamie Angeli real quick. So when I was with Jamie, when I first started with him, he obviously had his stuff that he would say and whatnot. And, I'd be, on one side of the court, kind of coaching defensive part of a drill or whatever it may be. And if he felt like I wasn't talking enough, he had two plans. He'd either walk by me and, mumble something that I probably shouldn't share on the air,
right?
Let me know that it was time to start talking and get louder, or he'd put me on the spot and he'd
right.
be, he'd stop the drill and be like, all right, Jeremy, make the, what are we going to do to adjust this? And, it keeps you tuned in, it keeps you locked in. And I'm so lucky to have a guy like him as a mentor and a friend. And he taught me so much about what it meant to be a good assistant. Yeah. Along with JR.
Finding mentors is another side note. Young coaches should go find your mentors. That's so important.
This is a great time to do it.
It's a great time. All right, so I'm going to do my rapid fire with you, Coach. Which is, I ask quick questions. They usually tend to be one or two sentences answer. First of all, do you have any superstitions?
Yes. During the national anthem, at the end of every national anthem, I close my eyes and pray for good health and pray for a competitive game. I ask for both those things before every game.
Yep. I think everybody has I start moving on home. It's like, there's like, people will know, like, that's when I start moving. It's like that word home comes. And my son just graduated. So I would always give him a whack in the back of his head. So it was like a little love pat. It's fun to have those. I think they're fun. Favorite brand of basketball, like the ball that you use to shoot?
Spalding.
Okay, why? Don't yell, Mike. Go ahead.
Spalding, because it's our game ball. I mean,
game ball.
Nothing better than having your game ball in your hand.
No, I think that's true. One word to describe your ideal player.
Versatile.
Okay. One sporting event in the entire world, what would you go to and why?
Oof.
Coaches hate that. That might be the worst question I ask when I do rapid fires. People hate that one because there's so many good ones.
Depends on a lot of things. I won't get into the details. Like, depends on. I've been to a couple Super Bowls in my life, and I've been to some NBA championships.
The Super Bowl doesn't appeal to me. I mean, I'm obviously a Packer fan. That one's not on my list, actually.
Been to a few Super Bowls. I've actually been to a couple of really good ones. I've been to all the ones that the Patriots won just by chance. I was at all of those. I was at the Rams Titans one where he reached out for the goal line.
Right.
I was at the Lakers when they were in Orlando. I was there when they when they beat Orlando. Yeah. But one event, to be honest with you, I've been to a cricket match in South Africa. I'm trying to think if there's one thing I could do. You know what? I would like to be, I say this all the time, and maybe during this quarantine I'll have the opportunity. I would like the opportunity, not for, let's say sporting, if it's sporting event, stick me at the March Madness. I love going to the, 2 games, the Big East tournament, seeing 2 in the afternoon, 2 in the evening.
The Final Four is fun. I took my son to the Final Four last year. That was so much fun. That was great.
That's my favorite sporting event, I have to say, if I could be anywhere. But if you would allow me, if I could be at any sporting event, I want to sit in the, in the coaches meeting, with Nick Saban and watch him do a staff meeting before practice with, 40 coaches and how they go over everything.
Favorite pregame meal?
Oh, that's a no-brainer. It's pasta with marinara sauce, very bland, plain and simple.
Okay. One skill not being taught in today's game?
I'll go with mid-range.
Okay. One thing you do to relax?
Sheesh, I feel like I'm always basketball all the time, all the way around. I think spending time with my grandmother and my dog. My grandmother's she's from South Africa and she moved here and she's just started to understand the game of basketball. So, I love spending time with her
How is
and
she?
my
Is
dog.
she good? Is she quarantined and healthy?
Yeah, she's fantastic. She's doing great. She lives just a couple blocks from where I live and she's doing great.
Good.
So
Awesome.
it's good. Thank you.
I know. To do one coaching technique you consider important.
Using your timeouts effectively.
I'm going to go to heaven, if I go to heaven, with a lot of timeouts because I need them at the end. I swear to God.
Absolutely.
Very rarely will I not have any several with a couple minutes to go because I think they're so valuable at the end.
Yeah.
So our rule is, and I don't know, our rule is, this is what I hate, is a loose ball. Here's our rule in our program. Loose ball, you're going to get it. It's a scrum, man, and we're not calling a timeout. So, and the reason is we know that we're not calling a timeout. Like,
right.
So my guys know that if there's a ball, that you better move toward it because the guy that's getting it is going to look to give it to somebody. They're not going to grab it and take that timeout 30 seconds into the game and burn one of my timeouts.
Right. That's actually a great idea.
It has helped us so much because it's an advantage for us. It's caused them to go after the ball. And then, I said, I'll call one if it's the fourth, the end of the game and we need one, or I'll call it. Don't worry about that. But you go get it. And then we've got layups and stuff because we know we're going to get it.
Right.
And you're not 100%. Burning it. Yeah. So, best basketball player you have seen in person?
Michael Jordan, by far.
Okay. Best basketball player of all time?
Yeah.
Michael Jordan. Okay. The one thing you help you become a better coach?
Being around the right people.
And how did that happen?
That happened from putting myself in positions where I would have to be uncomfortable and find a way to get comfortable.
Yep.
Learning how to have uncomfortable conversations and learning how to have difficult conversations and challenging yourself to, be comfortable in situations you normally wouldn't be comfortable in.
Pause the podcast, rewind that, all you young coaches. Listen to that about 3 times because that's the one of the many golden nuggets, but that's a golden nugget right there. Because sending emails, sending resumes, sending all that stuff is not going to open up doors. I forgot who I was talking to. It was an NBA coach, and he goes, if you knew how many resumes I got, Steve, everybody I've ever hired, I've had a relationship with. I've known them, or someone knew them, or somebody, that's what they don't understand. It's like,
Right.
One thing that best game you've seen in person?
Basketball?
Doesn't matter.
Best basketball game I've seen in person. I'm a diehard Seton Hall fan. I grew up a Seton Hall fan. We had season tickets when I was younger, dating back to like the Eddie Griffin, Darius Lane days. But can't think of a specific one. I'll say, actually, I have it on my wall. What was it here? April 20th in 1996. Second to last game of the year for the Chicago Bulls in their 72-win season. I get a chance to fly out to Chicago and see the game. Michael Jordan misses a shot with 10 seconds to tie the game, to take the lead by 2. The Bulls foul with 3 seconds left, and the Pacers hit 2 free throws, make 1 of 2 free throws to win 199. I fly back to New York. The next day they win number 72. The only game I saw that Bulls season was them losing to the Pacers pretty much at the buzzer. That's the best game I've ever seen.
Wow. Yeah, it's so interesting because I have an 18-year-old in the house, and I don't think they really understand Michael. I mean, I think they do, but I think Last Dance is helping a little bit. But
you know what a close second was? Is I was at David Cohn's perfect game for the New York Yankees, and that was something like the intensity that you feel and the pressure that you're witnessing on an individual to compete at a high level under extreme exhaustion, heat, and those circumstances mentally. That was something that will always stick with me as well.
Favorite quote?
Favorite quote?
I think he sent me one. I don't remember. I can find it.
I could tell you. I think it's tough. I have two.
Okay, you can. I'll give you two. I'll open up the vault and give you two.
No, so I just have one actually.
Okay.
It's be where your feet are. And that to me means so much. It's, someone told me, and I live by this, like the job that I'm at right now, that's my UConn. That's my,
right.
That's me living my best life. And, Coach Lynn Dunn said it on a podcast, and she said, be where your feet are, and do your very best at the place that you are and treat it like it's your dream job. And for me, it where I'm at is my dream job right now. And so every day, I got an office and I go into it, and I love being there, and I love coaching hoops, and I hope that they let us.
So again, all the young coaches, rewind that and listen to that, because when you go to the Final Four and you're a member of the NABC and you watch all these young coaches, they all look like they're unhappy. They all look like they're trying to find the next job, which I get is part of that game, especially at the D1 level. But I even see it from the D3 assistants. It's like the grass isn't always greener. Learn where you're at. If you're good, they're going to find you. Like if you're LeBron, they're going to find you. If you know what you're doing and you make connections, people will find you. So, yeah, I think people are always looking for that next gig. And that's one of the reasons I haven't left my job. It's like, it was a horrible program. We turned it around. Why would I leave? Like, this is it's a great job. I mean, it's.
Yeah. And you got to know what makes you happy.
I
think that when you find it, you got to do your best.
Well, and I didn't want to spend my 30s and 40s, in gyms in summer. And, that was a decision. I wanted to be there for my kids. Top best basketball coach of all time. This is always harder than the player.
My favorite basketball coach, and then I have I'm going to say Greg Popovich. He's probably the best basketball coach of all time.
Okay.
Everything I've read about Greg Pop and everything that I've read, I think it's unbelievable. I read a lot about Jay Wright too. He's pretty amazing himself, but everything I've learned about Popovich is amazing.
I would agree. One book you would recommend?
That's a great segue. Jay Wright's Attitude.
Okay. One thing that you do to become a better coach?
Make sure I learn something every day.
Okay. And the last thing is one thing you would tell a young coach.
Well, I would say that, kind of like back to the quote is, be where your feet are, but do the very best at where you are. Be the best at whatever your responsibilities are. Be the best at whatever you're given to do. Master that craft, and don't look far beyond that, because number one, I look back now on my career as an assistant, and I had some great memories, and maybe I wasn't living the dream in each moment, but I was happy to be where I was. So it was, I embraced it. But mastering everything that you're taught before moving on to something else will make you a better coach once you finally, find the place you want to be.
That's a great last question. Thank you, Coach. I really appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, Coach, first of all, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you like the content. We work really hard to put something out every day for you as a basketball coach. Subscribe, hit that little bell. If you're looking to take your coaching to the next level, if you're looking to go from here to here, let me help you do that. Go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. 30 years plus experience, a lot of state championships. Let me help you go to that next step.